welcome to each one of you to our one-year anniversary conversation. It is indeed an honor to host this milestone session. My name is Tulika Sharan, and I will be your host for the session. So when I was thinking about this session, the entire last year flashed by in my mind like a movie. A year ago, my dear friend Archana Verma, a senior IAS officer, spearheaded a group of passionate people to found the Proud Depressive movement. Today marks 1 year of that relentless efforts of Proud Depressives to fight the stigma that surrounds mental health and raise awareness around it. It is overwhelming how the idea gained strength. It started with people who suffered depression coming out with courage and talking about it. Along with these founder members, renowned world-class mental health professionals and a bunch of non-judgmental supporters and friends came together and rallied around the idea from which the movement truly was born. To be honest, Proud Depressives was addressing a need loudly felt for long, a safe space to come forward and talk, share, bust myths, and learn. Every month, the Proud Depressive movement holds a session around a mental health theme. Honest, vulnerable, candid, impactful sessions. Starting from the first session, which had Archana share her own story of battling depression, and Parikshit, the legal provisions that safeguard against discrimination at work, we continued to feature really amazing people as our speakers. Bright, bold, smiling, successful, busy people, champions in their fields, top-notch successful bureaucrats, academicians, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, creative and media personas from all over the world. Perhaps a telling story in itself, breaking myths on what a depressed person looks like. We covered themes like bullying and gaslighting, living with anxiety and bipolar disorder, caregiving and role of family and friends, cancer and depression, depression across generations, surviving major depressive disorder, coping with trauma, impact of seasons on mood swings, depression and creative expressions, and so on. Archana continues to be the central force leading and guiding it, but we have many more driving it with pride and ownership. And Lisa, I'm thinking here of you too. Month on month, the Carva continues to grow in size and support. We continue to see new people join the movement. Let us watch a short video to cheer and celebrate these committed social change agents, for they are no less than this, and recap and reflect on the year that has gone by. Sejal, at this point, may I request you to kindly run the video?
Do you have to switch off the camera when the video is running?
Not necessarily. Sejal will screen share, so that will be the one. Otherwise, Sejal, you are the tech expert. Please guide.
She's already started.
Happy anniversary, Proud Depressives. Thank you for watching.
So cute.
Very good.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Sejal. Well done.
Beautiful. Well done, Sejal.
Very nice.
So much
Very
eyes. Yeah. And so we have
Very
seen
nice.
how this movement has been curated. Really, it's amazing to see the year. It's so impactful, and it has been duly curated to have a brand of its own, complete with the logo, the butterfly, the beautiful butterfly in the head that Archana is using as her logo also right now. That the beautiful butterfly we owe to our friend, artist friend Chaitali Mukherjee, suggesting metamorphosis of thoughts from chaos to order. And Proud Depressives have brand presence across platforms too: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. All our sessions are recorded and uploaded on YouTube also for viewing, which sees massive interaction and engagement from people. And at some point, Archana, I'll pull you in to reflect also on the first year that she so passionately set up and identifies herself with.
Sure.
So now to continue with the job well done so far by the Proud Depressives, we are here today with our most mind-blowing theme, depression, my friend. I'm sure many of us are keen to discuss and unravel a topic so pertinent. Does depression go away completely? Is it a suffering we can live with? I hear some background noise, so if people can go on mute if they're not talking. Thank you so much. Does depression go away completely? Is it a suffering we can live with, almost befriend it, and have a fully functional and productive life? Let us find out. So with that, let me introduce and invite today's speakers, Mini Vaid and Dr. Rajni Parthasarthi. Meet the writer Mini Vaid. Mini Vaid actually wears many hats. A journalist, both print and television, documentary filmmaker, television professional, creative producer, and author. She is passionate about fighting against injustice via her films and books, and is happiest while shooting with villagers in rural India, and loves Shah Rukh Khan, perhaps in that precisely that order. Over the last 30 years, Mini has produced, directed, and scripted over 30 films and television programs, some of which have won national and international awards. Her chosen areas of interest are politics, social issues, human rights, gender, environment, and culture. She has written articles and participated in discussions and debates at seminars and book readings. Minnie Vaid has also written 4 non-fiction books on human rights activists, people's struggles, and India's women scientists, which received a lot of favorable press coverage. That's not all. Minnie has held jobs in various supervisory capacities, in leadership roles as executive and creative producer, director, heading teams responsible for shows that are telecast without a hitch on time. Her documentaries have been shown in film festivals in the US, Australia, New Zealand, India, and many more countries. From 1997 to 2000, Minnie Vaid worked at Star Plus as an executive producer. In 2000, she formed her own company, Little Dog Productions, and now works as an independent filmmaker and producer. She continues to make films today, along with writing non-fiction books. That's Minnie Vaid. Dr. Rajni Parthasarthi, our other speaker for today, is a psychiatrist with an MBBS and a diploma in psychological medicine. For the last 20 years, Dr. Rajni has been committed to address mental health needs. Her stated objective is to strive for a culture that is resilient to stressors and to free the people from mental illnesses and from substance abuse. Dr. Rajni has worked tirelessly to improve the mental health of prisoners, and I was very intrigued to, read this part about her biodata. Her contribution for the extensive work done at Central Prison Bangalore as a psychiatrist has received commendation from DIG, DG, and IG prisons. In addition to her inspiring work in prisons, her accomplishments include writing and editing books on mental health and training of medical officers, paramedical staff, elected representatives, police and prison staff on early identification of mentally ill. Dr. Rajni is also engaged in several key studies around themes like peer-led strength-building programs for suicide prevention amongst young adults, strengthening social approaches to mental health, and for improving knowledge, attitude, and behaviors of primary caregivers towards people with mental illness. Very pertinent effort, and we need all of that. Dr. Rajni, I will ask you especially to comment upon your experience working in the prisons. But before that, I'm turning to Minnie. Minnie, you call depression your friend. That's an amazing and a unique perspective. Can I please invite you to share your story? How did it all start, if you could please share?
Yeah, thank you, Tulika, for a very generous introduction. And first of all, I'd like to wish everybody, and congratulate you on the anniversary. And I must say, this must be the only meeting or occasion or event where there are no butterflies in the stomach, because it's a safe space. There are people who understand you. They'll not be judgmental. They have your back, and it's like a support system. So that's, from my heart, that thank you very much for that. So I just wrote about this, depression being as a friend, as an ally in my last article. But it has taken a long time to reach this place. Yeah. Initially, a long time ago, if one talks about my story, I resisted it like crazy. I was always fighting it. That I should just get rid of this thing. Somehow or the other, I should get rid of it. I used to fight with it. To fight with my doctor, my psychiatrist, and say, when are you going to reduce the medicine? When am I going to get off the medicine? My goal was just that. Getting off the medicine, getting off, not going to his clinic, never seeing him again. So that so much resistance was there that I want to, jaan chudao yahan se. I just want to get rid of it. But it took a long time to reach a place where today I've made my peace with it. I've accepted it with full awareness and knowledge that, it'll come and it'll go. And if I fight it, it'll take longer to go. And so it's kind of become like an ally. Also, if you rely a lot on self-soothing, and, because in the pandemic, really, you have to devise your own ways. And so then you have to make it your ally. It cannot be an adversarial relationship that you have with depression. And to start at the beginning, and I'll just mention it very briefly because even today I get triggered by something that happened in 1986. My husband was diagnosed with third stage lung cancer 4 months into after our wedding. I was 25 years old, and I still remember the radiation oncology head at Tata Memorial, Dr. Dinshaw, writing 4/12 on my file. And till today, if I pass, first of all, I don't go past Tata Memorial, but if I pass it, I look the other way. So a lot of trauma and all the rest of it. And that's when I first had to take help from a psychiatrist because I really didn't know what was happening. I used to just cry all the time, and it was a really dark space. Which even talking about it so many years later, you think that it would have abated, but it doesn't. So that was a very dark space, but friends of mine probably recognized it. I didn't recognize it as depression. I just thought, okay, such a horrible thing has happened, and now I have to get through it, and I don't know, so maybe this is normal, but I didn't even recognize it as depression. Then I was told by friends, and then I went to meet a psychiatrist. And then on, the whole journey with mental health treatment began. So now, as I had written in that article, in 86, there was no counseling. You could not talk about it. You couldn't share it even with your close friends or anything. Certainly, you couldn't share it in the workplace. The stigma was so massive. So you just, even when you went, I have a very clear memory. Even when I used to go to the clinic, sometimes there would be different exits. So, other people didn't know that you're a patient of depression, you have come to see a psychiatrist. That itself was stigma. But sometimes if that was not there, then I would just stand at the window and look out and pretend that, I'm not really here. I'm just here sort of being a bystander, not a patient, that kind of a thing. And then the conversations about medicine, please get me off it and all. And the very patient psychiatrist used to tell me, if you were a diabetic, you would take insulin, wouldn't you? You wouldn't sort of judge yourself. And similarly, if you broke your leg, do you think somebody would come and say, okay, please get up and go for a walk on the second day? No. So, you have to give it. But it took a lot of time. And then, of course, in 3 years, my husband died. And after that also, there was nothing called grief counseling at that time. Nothing. So, you just, your family or friends or whatever just dealt with it in whatever way they knew at that time, which was, as far as my family is concerned, just wipe out all traces, hide all the photographs, don't ever talk about, just pretend it, because, tumko bura lagega, you'll feel hurt. Much later, of course, you realize that this is the wrong approach. But at that time, that was the only approach. There was no knowledge. There was no awareness. And I myself went on a fellowship. I went abroad for some time, some press fellowship. And after that, my way of coping was to just work. And I did 16-hour work days and just kind of submerged myself in that. And very, very fortunately for me, I loved my work. I still do. And the type of work that I did, which was, a political journalist at Newstrack, we would travel 20 days a month. And so I'd just go finish off really grueling shoots, come back, file the story, edit it, file money, edit the story, and then on to the next story and the next and the next. I didn't take a pause to take a breath and ever reflect. I think for years this went on. I never really looked inside and asked myself, okay, how are you really doing? I just ignored my mental health for a long, long time. And so you can say for some amount of time, it went away, then it came back and went away and came back. And since I was in Delhi, I didn't even meet my doctor except, on visits to Mumbai, on shoots, and then I would, just go and do a catch up and all. And he was very understanding and accommodating about it. But it was never the focus of my life. My work became my focus, and I just, lost myself in that without even realizing that aage jaake this is going to have, consequences. But that was the way it seemed to be a coping strategy that worked. and that is why I used it. And then so it came and went, and then as I became more how shall I put it without sounding vain, I loved my work. So I got some amount of recognition here and there. So in Singapore, I went to get an award for a film that we done on the MCC. So that felt nice. So the more positive strokes you get, you feel better about yourself. And the work certainly was that. My work was my safe space. It still continues to be my safe space. But I'd like to just tell people, don't only make your work your safe space. Please include other people. Please include safe spaces like this forum. Please talk to people, counselors, all of which happened much later on. But this, in a nutshell, this is what it was.
Thank you, Minnie. That's such a candid, soulful story, and thank you for sharing it. Dr. Rajni, I saw it on your profile that you, and it fascinated me, this line that you've written, that mental health problems can affect anybody in their life, irrespective of their economic status, education, power, and position, and there is a proven solution. And look at Minnie. I mean, here's a great example of exactly that line. I am especially wanting to know more about the proven solution bit. So is there a cure to depression? What is the solution that you talk about? Can one suffer only one episode and be out of it forever? Or do you see people coming back with recurring phases, but can manage them and stay functional?
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, congratulations for 1 year anniversary, and the congratulations to the whole team. And I'm very excited. Usually in different forums we have spoken, and this is a different experience what I myself, my endorphins have increased today and I am getting a kick out of it, to be frank. And and then the video was so nicely made, and it showed the chronology, how it was evolved. And I wish more and more people join hands to destigmatize mental health issues. It is as simple as cough and fever. See, usually we go and tell, I had cough last week, severe cough, I had pneumonia, I had severe difficulty in breathing, I went to this physician, it was all right, As Madam Minnie told, from the beginning, very nicely, she has, showed us how the depression can be there and it is not recognized. It is not recognized usually. So, and then there is a very thin line wherein we feel sad and it moves on to the depression. So that I think we should know, right? So there are many causes and myths. So myths are like, I am a superwoman. I am a psychiatrist. I can never become depressed. I am a judge. I can never become depressed. I counsel so many people. How can I become depressed? So this kind of myths are there everywhere around. So, but I keep telling that my brain doesn't know I am a psychiatrist. My brain doesn't know I am a judge. My brain doesn't know I am an advocate. I am a film director. I am a corporate person. So my brain doesn't know. So usually how it happens, what is the cause of mental illness, like cause of diabetes? See, cause of diabetes is, you have to stop me where I have to stop, because if I am talking too much.
No, that's okay.
So like pancreas is not secreting insulin. Simple reason, right? You get diabetes. So even when you are diagnosed recently as a diabetic person, suddenly, you're feeling sad, you're feeling tired, or you're not able to eat, or you're eating too much, but you have lost a lot of weight. So the doctor will say that, you go just check your random blood sugar or fasting blood sugar or HbA1c. Suddenly, a person recently realized, she had come for depression. But this time, this was a second episode, but this time she was telling, doctor, I'm feeling very tired nowadays. The depression part is cured. She was only telling, I'm not feeling sad. I'm eating well. I'm sleeping well. But for some reason, I'm very tired. So then I told, so go and get your blood sugars checked. So it was 350. like random sugar was 350. She said, to my surprise, nobody is diabetic in my house, and it is diagnosed. So the simple reason is pancreas is not secreting insulin and there is diabetes. Okay, fine. So depression or any psychiatric problem also, there is neurochemical disturbance in the brain, like serotonin reduction, increase in the dopamine, norepinephrine. A simple reason you can go into depression. So there are various causes, like some genetic vulnerabilities will be there, some triggers, like, the madam was telling there was a disaster in the family, like, so then that may be a trigger. And when we don't cope or when we don't have resources to cope, obviously, so nobody wants to just like go get into the well of depression and, suffer. Nobody wants that, right? So there is neurochemical disturbances, and then thereon it can start like that. So you were asking, is it only one episode of depression which happens, or is it repetitive? So usually what we say is 30, one third for any disorder or mental illness. So 1/3 of them will have one episode of depression and treat it well for about 9 months with counseling, with medicines. Serotonin level is balanced 4 to 6 weeks. Post that also, it is balanced. We gradually reduce the medicine and we stop at the end of 9 months or 1 year. So some people, 1/3 of the people, it doesn't recur. But another 1/3 of the people, what they recognize very fast, right? So the next episode, maybe some sudden triggers are there, demise of somebody in the family, very kith and kin, or failure in romance, failure in an exam, failure in some, some venture, what they start, financial stress, anything that can be a trigger. Like your biological disturbances starts, like decreased sleep or increased sleep, decreased appetite or increased appetite, loss of interest, you are not able to enjoy what you were enjoying before. So all these things, and sometimes, no point in living, negative thoughts, suicidal ideas, suicidal plans, and sometimes they start executing that also. So these can happen, but they recognize fast. I think I'm going into depression. Let me run to my doctor. So they usually come back, and within, first episode depression, as madam was telling, they will be very, very reluctant. Am I depressed? I'm, I have helped so many people. I can't be depressed. Why should I go to psychiatrist? No, am I mad? Why are you taking me to psychiatrist? So the all kind of things. And madam clearly told, I remember a lot of my patients. They said, when are you going to stop? When will I stop coming to your clinic? Initially, they'll be like that. But after 2-3 months, they become like a family member to us. No, we both become family members. So post that, they will start telling, doctor, what do you like? I make good paratha. I make good dosa. So it becomes like that. So they don't hate coming to doctors. And of course, it depends on the relationship what the doctor has with the client also. So usually if we strictly say, how is your sleep? How is your appetite? Are you all right? Okay, go take this. So it may not help that way. So most of the time, it is your, client doctor relationship that also helps. And how are you going to help the client in building up the social network, social support, as madam has coped very well with the busy work. So we usually tell them, do something which gives you happiness. So working a lot may give happiness to somebody. Going for regular walk, regular gym may give happiness to somebody. Networking with people, that may give happiness to somebody. And then, achieving something. Madam was telling that we got some awards and other things. Yes, that is a very big kick. It increases our endorphins. We feel recognized and, So those are all the things what you can do. And another 1/3, there can be recurrent depression. Okay. But we usually give mood stabilizers and antidepressants together, which will make them very functional. But what is very, very, very important is early recognition, seeking help. That's all. So that is the mantra, So mild depression will be there, which we call as dysthymia for years together, more than 2 years, that little low mood, not able to do up to your potential, right? So if I am active, if my zeal, enthusiasm will help me to work to my potential or little more than the potential. But if you have that mild depression, of course, you can push your life without medicine, without counseling, without networking, without talking, but the quality of life suffers. So my only request is, whenever there is any issue, any behavioral problem, any change in biological functions like sleep, appetite, sexual, reduction in sexual desire, negative thoughts, or extreme anxiety, or maladaptive coping. This is also important. Going for tobacco, alcohol, cannabis, opioids. So many men and some women, so they have this kind of coping strategy also, which also will affect your brain, because most of the substances, including alcohol, they're all brain depressants. So temporarily you will feel, your thoughts are shut and you don't think about the agony. But of course, our goal should be, for example, I cannot erase the thought that some disaster happened 35 years back, but fine, even if that negative thought, if the thought comes, I should be able to handle that. That should be the goal. So
Okay.
this is how it works.
No, that is very well explained, Doctor. Thank you so much. So, I mean, we are also sharing all of this information for people to listen into and understand and help identify in themselves and in society around them. So, in the same spirit of sharing information, Minnie, my next question is to you. You used, I mean, it's almost like workaholism and being a highly functional person that helped you cope with depression. But how often did these episodes happen? Because you mentioned that you call depression your friend. So
Yeah.
and did they coincide with a trigger? Like you mentioned your personal setback, that story, or is it like accompanying a health issue or something? And how long does typically an episode last?
Well, mostly
May I
I would have to say,
May I request others to go on mute again, because I hear a background noise. So if others can go on mute. Sorry, Minnie, please continue.
yeah, no problem. There's some crow over here. He's not going away. Usko shoo karne ki koshish kar rahi hai. So he's here.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Somebody's
Yeah,
friend.
there's Yeah,
Crow
there's
wants
some
to
crow.
listening too. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I would say definitely the triggers were some like unwanted experiences or events or health or related to the job, and certainly that those were the triggers. And as I said, because I didn't give it enough importance at that time, mental health, I would just deal with it and just hope that okay, once this unwanted event gets over, then I'll be fine and then I'll be okay. So at best, I would take an extra Alprax at night, or sort of or work harder or stuff like that, which actually didn't really solve the problem. And wo baad mein jaake it just became like something which you can't keep inside. But in those years, the Delhi years, I would call it, where I was working like this, it would come and go. It would come and go. Mostly, I wouldn't even recognize it. Till it is so bad that you are having, because see, now there is a concept also of taking a mental health day, or having what I call 90 days, where for no reason at all, no trigger, nothing, you're just feeling really, really low and depressed, and it's okay to feel that. It's okay to take a 90-day and just veg out in front of the TV. It's okay to eat ice cream. It's okay to do it. But us zamane mein, like I'm talking of 90s, late 90s and all, this concept was not there. No, nobody understood it. They were like, okay, get up and go to work, go and exercise, meet your friends, do whatever. Don't hang around like that. So now what I've learned to do after such a long time is to catch it quickly. The minute you're aware, you catch it earlier, then you don't fall so down in the valley. You can catch it and be in the troughs, and that really is the only thing. And because all the years of therapy also later on with counseling also helped, because this thought feeling mood, don't get into the what ifs. All these are things which you then, at a little later stage, when you're able to just take a breath and recognize it, you start putting it in practice. So now, for instance, I've learned to recognize the what if cycle when it is happening. Yeah. So, for instance, if I have to go for a mammo, like routine mammogram, which has always been a scary thing for me, because anything cancer related just immediately triggers, and so that becomes the thing. So if I'll go for if I have to do it on a Monday and Friday ko pata chala ki I have to do a mammo test on Monday, I consciously think that, okay, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm not going to think about worst case scenarios. Because I have done this many, many times. Okay, so Monday I'll go and then the test will come positive and then I'll get it. And so then I'll try to, go to Dignitas, register myself in Dignitas, kill myself there so that my family is not, impacted by my cancer. Look where your thoughts go. You haven't even done the test yet. You haven't even gone to the doctor yet. But on a Friday, you're thinking about what effects will happen on Monday for if that happens. So this, like, just to give you an example, this is what Arjun said to Krishna also in the Mahabharata. Because Krishna asked him a simple question: why are you not fighting? He said, I'm not fighting because if I fight and then of course I kill all these people, then when I die, who will be there to do my Kiryakara? Look where he has gone. He was just asked, why are you not fighting? And he's gone kahan se kahan. So if you catch the what ifs earlier and stop it there, I find that helps me a lot. Like today.
That's excellent. In fact, that is what I was coming to. That how do you identify and what are some of the warning signs? And again, I'm asking these questions because so that people can relate and resonate. Dr. Rajni also shared some. But what are some of your warning signs that tell you that?
My warning signs are very easy. My stomach just kind of packs up. Appetite goes, stomach gets clenched. So it's what I call the depression weight loss program, because you really lose weight in it. You just can't eat. You're so clenched and tense all the time. You don't sleep uninterrupted. You get up at 5 o'clock, then you can't go back to sleep. You get irritable, angry, snapping at people. So it's like a whole fearful thoughts on a loop till you recognize, okay, this is you're getting into a fearful thought. So these are things which by now I've learned to recognize. And then I've also learned to be kinder to myself.
Yeah.
It's fine. So I'm snapping at my mother. She's done nothing to deserve it. But it's because I'm under a lot of stress, or I'm very depressed today. I'm just having a really bad day. It's okay. I'll apologize tomorrow. So constantly, if you beat yourself up, there's no yardstick of perfection you have to reach. It's fine. It's fine to be like this. It's fine to take it easy and be kind to yourself. Ask others to be kind to you also. And not be judgmental and use, we'll come to that later when it comes to victim shaming, gaslighting, all these things that you go through. But these are the triggers, and now I have learned to recognize it.
Okay, so great. So it's more about awareness and being,
Yes,
vocal
absolutely.
and letting people also know around you. Okay. Great.
Yes, absolutely.
So Dr. Rajni, we have Minnie's example. Yeah. And we have Minnie's example where she's such a high functioning kind of a depressive. And we have heard stories about people who are not even able to get out of their bed. So what explains this range, and how do you reflect on Minnie's story here?
Okay. Yeah. So
Dr.
Madam
Rajni?
actually has explained it very well. Similar to a doctor. I mean, she's no
Thank you.
than a doctor, what she has explained.
Thanks.
So the early warning signs, what she told, that irritability, you need not be sad all the time if you are depressed. That is also one myth. Somebody is, walking, talking, irritable. How are you telling that person is depressed? That is also a myth. A person who is depressed can present in different ways. Just the irritability, like children, adolescents, just the school refusal, just absenteeism to the work, just the irritability and, lack of appetite. Or some people have problem of increased appetite, atypical depression. So the warning signs, she has rightly pointed out. So decreased sleep, also she mentioned. Early morning awakening, that is very, very, very common. So one more question you asked,
I asked about some people can't get out of the bed.
Yeah. So that is usually, if you go through the treatment plan, that is very, very less. Unless you have another physical ailment which makes you so, bedridden. So as far as I have seen, I had a client who is around mid 40s, right? So she was actually going through depression, but there were no typical symptoms of depression. All that she was telling was, I'm very tired, I have this pain, I have that pain, I have a headache, I have leg pain. So many multiple somatic symptoms. So she had gone to various hospitals. I don't want to name those big hospitals. So many doctors had seen, she had done doctor shopping, whole body scan was done, PET scan was done. So a lot of these things had happened and she was completely bedridden. So finally, one neurologist friend of mine whom I knew, she went and hit him. So after that, he told him, told her, it seems, and the family that just go meet a psychiatrist. For a whole 1 year, nobody had suggested that just go see a psychiatrist. Okay, so literally, I'm telling you, she was carried to my clinic. Husband, she couldn't even put her slippers. So husband actually literally put her slippers when she was going out. So when I, first day he carried her, he made her sit with difficulty in my clinic. I spoke to her. She had lot of, pent up emotions from childhood, lot of those abuse and other things. So she could share everything. So she was telling, doctor, this is the first time somebody is asking, how are you? Is anything happened? Is anything bothering you? So these are all the questions which may trigger, some people, they may not be very comfortable sharing, their physical abuse, sexual abuse, or various other, problems, what they would have found from the age of 9. So they vividly remember what has happened at that age. I didn't know what it is at all. Today, I'm feeling very guilty remembering that. So all these things. So she could share everything with me for about 45 minutes. And she was diagnosed as depression. And to my surprise, and her luck and the family's luck, within 2 to 3 weeks, she was wonderful, walking, talking, and she started cooking. She even today, it is more than 10 years. She's fine. No, not even relapse. No, depression didn't relapse also. So I had treated her for about 9 months. That's all. And the family says even today, we thought she's almost going to die. That is the last thing. So you just for, depression, bedridden, I don't know. So if they really get proper treatment. But sometimes resistant depression can happen due to multiple physical problems like hypothyroidism and other issues. Sometimes resistant depression can happen, but they may not be bed bound just because of depression. So that's what I would want to tell. That amount of psychotherapy, medication, so a lot of support, social support. So ideally, all these things should be there. So have you seen anybody who is, just bed bound because of depression?
Maybe for some days, but then...
Yeah, that can happen. I told you, this lady was bed bound for almost an year. She was not even getting up and walking. And in the prison, I have seen a person who was literally paralyzed, paraplegia we call. So below belt, no sensations. Okay. So he was a prison person and he was also treated by multiple doctors, but they had not recognized that he's going through depression. So the moment we started on antidepressants, he started walking. He came on wheelchair actually. So he started walking and, I'm not telling every stroke, every paraplegia is because of depression, but you should have an eye towards that also. So many, atypical presentations. So like psychogenic vomiting, psychogenic purpura, like severe itching. So they would have seen multiple dermatologists. They would have given all the allergic medicines, whole lot of investigations. Nothing would have happened, helped them. So psychogenic vomiting is very well known. Psychogenic allergy is also very well known. So on because of stress, you can get migraine, tension headaches. So what I want to make the forum clear is depression doesn't mean just the sadness and suicidal thoughts. So there are many other atypical presentations also.
Okay, that's excellent information. And in fact, you referred to your prison experience, and doctor, I definitely do want to know more about it, because that's the marginalized of the marginalized. A, you are a prisoner. B, you're mentally ill. So I wanted to understand your experience and also find out if you see growing awareness and sensitization around it. And do you think that there is change that is happening in how you have seen your work with the prisoners, especially?
I'm sorry, I lost you in between. Some sound came. You wanted to know the prison experience, right?
Prison experience, and because they are the most marginalized in the social fabric. And what led to that awareness and sensitization? Do you think that it is there? And if you have seen over your the breadth of your experience, if that is enhancing, changing, or not changing, so some of that.
So initially, for about I think 17 years back, I think it is kind of sharing of my own experience. So I was a young doctor, fresh from National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences and Christian Medical College, Vellore, 2 top institutes in India. And I was like fresh and, fresh doctor from top institutes, you can imagine. So then my first posting in state government was our commissioner asked, can you go to jail? I said, He said, no, there is a psychiatrist post there. I said, okay, I will try. So that is my first posting. I entered the jail and I went and joined in a second Saturday. No other doctors were there. There is a 100-bedded hospital there. So the first person I met was one person came and told, Madam, I am here for 2 murders. And I was thinking, where am I sitting? So then I was literally scared because, fresh doctor, young doctor, entering into a jail. See, the population, Central Prison Bangalore is the biggest jail in Karnataka, where, it is overcrowded, and usually you have 5,000 prisoners at any point in time. And then 600 mentally ill patients at any point in time, single psychiatrist. So there was no system as such. There was no psychiatric ward. There is nothing like, I am from a big institute like NIMHANS, Vellore and all, where everything is systematic. Here is a place where you have 600 psychiatric patients at any point in time, and no inpatients, no outpatient, no records, nothing. So usually in psychiatry, you will know that you usually talk to the patient plus the relatives, friends and family, and get some history to make a diagnosis. But in the prison, just a person comes and stands in front of you, nothing beyond that. Many times they don't know why they have come inside. So to give you an example, one person from Tamil Nadu had got into a train, and he has just come to Karnataka, Bangalore, and next day he is in jail. So we don't know why he has come. So this person was going around and plucking flowers. He used to pluck some roses and come and give. So then he was diagnosed to have hypomania and mania. So like when person has hypomania, they will be hyperactive. They will be very disinhibited, and they talk what they want. They tell you what they want, and they do very disinhibited things. Then we treated him. Later we realized that because of his severe mental illness, without his knowledge, he has just gotten into a train. And in Karnataka, Bangalore, he came near the High Court, that is nearer to the Majestic, where the bus stand is there. He became very hungry in the afternoon. He went and stole a tiffin box from High Court. And then he just ate off the food. Everybody shouted, thief, thief. And finally, police made him put him inside the jail. So post that, after 3 weeks, he was much better with the treatment and all. Then in the video conference, we told the judge that this is what has happened. Poor fellow was hungry and he has just stolen food and he has eaten. Then he was released. So many people like this, they come inside the jail and they don't know why they are in jail. But of course, around 20% of them, they have gotten into this kind of field for various reasons, from childhood peer pressures, impulsivity. Impulse control is one of the very, very common thing. To give you one example, a fellow was an adolescent, just young adult, 19 to 20-year-old, went to a hotel in the village. There was an altercation with the cashier for 5 rupees change. So this fellow told, I don't have change. You are the owner. You should have change. So in this altercation, this fellow gave 1 to the cashier and he died. And he ended up in the jail for 14 years. Imagine. And he was telling, Madam, even if somebody comes to kill me, I'm not going to talk. So this is the transformation and that impulsivity, anger. So anger is the biggest enemy, right? So going into the rage, whenever you're angry, I think you should just keep quiet, go out of the room or do something. And sometimes people can become physical and it can become disaster. And one more interesting last story I want to share. And we had trained a team of prisoners to recognize, early identify the symptoms of depression, because it is huge. Jail is huge, 5,000, and the population every year is more than 25,000 floating population. So the biggest jail. So a lot of suicides have to be prevented because they come in distress. 80% of them inside the prison, our scientific study only has shown that they can go through psychological distress, whether they have done some crime with impulsivity, without impulsivity, by chance, whatever it is. So freedom is the biggest thing that is important to the person. You may be giving wonderful food inside the prison, wonderful environment, but freedom is very, very important. So if we tell all of us here, you cannot get out of this meeting till 4 o'clock, you will be in distress, right? So imagine prison for years together, they have to be there inside. They can't go out on their whims and fancies. They can't do anything on their whims and fancies. So one fellow had come inside the jail, and our Shishyas, that big team of prisoners, convicts whom we had trained, wonderful team was there. Okay, so one fellow came and told, Madam, I think one fellow is going to attempt suicide today. He is looking very depressed. So we called him. I was talking to him. I asked him. He said, Doctor, don't even talk to me. The moment I enter the barrack, I am going to hang myself today. You need not talk to me. Just allow me to go out. So then I asked, okay, you can do whatever you want. Just tell me, is your life so pathetic? Do you want to die today itself? What happened? I am sure, just share what is happening. You can do whatever you want. I will not, tell anything to you. Then he started sharing. See, I was working in a hotel. He cheated me. And, using his influence, when I asked his 6 months salary, he, brought some gundas and he has hit me and, false case has been put on me. So why should I be alive? So much of injustice is happening around. I came here just to feed my mother, father, taking my monthly salary, and this fellow cheated me, and on top of that, I am in jail today. How am I going to show my face to my, parents, and what am I going to do? So then I said, okay, is your life worth only this many thousands? Are you not going to get any job anywhere? Then he said, no, already I got an offer 1 week back for 15,000 salary. Then can you do that? After going, then some realization, I don't know, fortunately, he said, no, I am not going to die. My life is worthier than that. Within half an hour, this is like, it was miraculous. I still remember vividly what happened that day. So within a week, he got bail and he went out. And the day when he was going, he came and told me, Doctor, the first day, if your team had not recognized, if you had not spoken to me, I think I would have committed suicide inside the jail. So like this, lakhs and lakhs of stories are there. And substance abuse like cannabis is quite more. Around 30 to 35% of them, they smoke ganja inside the jail, which is known, right? This is not only in Karnataka jails. Most of the jails, substance abuse is a major problem. So those also many people, they used to come and they used to get treated, and they used to go out. One fellow had actually called me as an auto driver who shared that, after treatment, ma'am, I had come 3 times to the jail. After getting treatment for cannabis dependence, today I am running auto. I have not come to the jail after that. So these are all the small things. Of course, yes, jail we can do wonderful work, and it should be a reformation center and a rehabilitative center than the punitive center. So the jails should be transformed into a rehabilitative centers than the and reformative centers than the punitive centers. So that is how you can help many families by helping one person inside the jail. If you allow him to do like that, there will be criminalization. They will learn many more things. If a person has come for theft or 307, he may do 302 next. Okay, so IPS officers will know.
Yeah.
So that's it. That is my jail experience. I can go on and on for days together.
Oh, that's so impressive, and I mean, you appeal to that humanity even in prisoners, and you try and bring that out and surface that up. We need many more Dr. Rajnees around us. And you mentioned how you were able to train your shishyas and soothe them and all of that. And Mini, you also mentioned that you self-soothe yourself, and this is even more important in this kind of a pandemic, because you don't have so many outlets of meeting people. So how do you self-soothe yourself? Can you share some tricks and tips with us?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to actually focus on self-soothing because that way you don't feel rejected if other people don't soothe you. Yeah, you don't feel disappointed and you don't feel hurt because you're the one who's going to soothe yourself. At the end of the day, we can only help ourselves. I mean, there are people who will help, of course, but it's better to be self-reliant. So for me, what has always worked is nature. And, unfortunately, because of pandemic, we can't go out and make otherwise a sunset at the beach or, Uttarakhand, the Himalayas in Uttarakhand. It's always been my go-to place. For the last 12 years, I've been going there every year. You get up and you sit outside, you look at the Himalayas and you feel, at least I feel really soothed and sort of at peace. However depressed I am, there's a feeling of calm which kind of permeates. And otherwise, other than nature, I mean, all the usual stuff, a good book, good music. I remember through the pandemic, every time I was really down, I watched and rewatched things like Downton Abbey or The Crown. I like British serials, so just on a loop, just comfort food, comfort watching, comfort music. I only talk to people who I knew wouldn't be judgmental and say, no, don't worry, everything, be positive, be positive. Either that anyone says be positive to me, I feel like taking out chappal and hitting them hard. If I could be positive, I would not shut the F up. मतलब समझ में नहीं आता लोगों को. They try to be nice. I mean, they're coming from a different space, trying to sort of help you, but such misguided comments. Be positive. What is be positive? What is positive and negative? Your thoughts are thoughts. They will come and they will go. They're not even your thoughts. They're just random thoughts which are there in your mind. So this whole thing about be positive, it really kind of triggers me. It's really like a trigger. So I talk to people who I know will, just kind of help me to relax and stuff like that. So these are all very obvious kind of measures of self-soothing, but they work. So whatever works for you, it's really at the end of the day, it's a customized single person solution. So, and empirically, what has worked for you is really the feel, or for me, is the feeling that in the past I've overcome it. I will overcome it now also. So ultimately, that is the only truth. That it's not a bottomless, limitless well. You have got out of it in the past. You've done many more things that you wouldn't have thought possible, and you will continue to do more. You don't have to just believe in yourself that पहले भी था और निकल गए इससे, and in future also you can do that. That thought really helps me. And sometimes that much awareness is not there when you're right in the throes of it, and you feel like, why me? It's always going to be like this, and better to just end it. And don't think I haven't had those thoughts. I've had them many times. But at the end of the day, after some time, the awareness does kick in. Your counseling and therapy that you have gone through does kick in. Your, cognitive facilities do kick in and say, okay, this is a limited time. I'm feeling like this now. It will not always be like that. And it passes. So that to me, that is the thing that is self-soothing.
Perfect. And this is just like knowing more about yourself, having that awareness around what is limiting you, and that you will overcome. Yes. And again, going back to the theme of depression, my friend, like.
Yes, absolutely.
I will live with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
You mentioned brilliantly, Minnie, and I think a lot of us do not even know how to react to people. And when they mention, a lot of people withdraw, they become like really scared. Okay, she has mental health issues. Let's not, or they say insensitive things, even when they are well-meaning. So what are some of these, comments or things? And I'm again asking because we would like to know, and we would like people to also to be aware that some of these things that they may say that trigger, and even when they are well-meaning. So what is a message to people who are listening to you now about some of these triggering statements and comments?
The message is very clear. Be kind. Be kind. Show empathy. Be kind. Try for 1 second to put yourself in the shoes of the person who's going through all that. Don't please say, think positive thoughts, because if the person could, he would. If he can't, that's why he's feeling depressed. Many things trigger, and again, they're all said by well-meaning people. Why don't you go and exercise? Why don't you join a gym? Why don't you eat apple? Why don't you eat this? Why don't you eat that? Why don't you talk to your friends? When pandemic jab nahi tha, why don't you go and see a movie? I am in a state where I don't feel like getting up in the morning. I feel as if I'm swimming in glue. I'm bogged down this much. You're asking me to go out and see a movie with my friends? How can I do that? So, and in the pandemic, the thing that I hated the most was people saying, take care. Matlab, you take care of yourself. We are not going to take care of you. So in my mind, that is how I read it. Maybe it's not true. Maybe the people who are saying take care generally wanted me to take care of myself. And that's how this whole self-soothing came, because I still feel rage. I have not at all overcome this part of it, hurtful comments. I still feel rage. The rage comes from the fact that people are making insensitive comments, and it is me who's suffering through the depression. They are not. The rage is that, really. The internal rage is that. Usko nahi hai, mujhe kyun hai? And uske upar se, I'm having depression. Upar se people are, saying things like take care and go for a walk and, play with the dog and talk to your friends and see a movie. Really, no. It's very hurtful. Be kind. Say things like, what can I do to help? Say that. How hard is it? I've written 7 articles, I think, on this, which are published, and I've shared it in multiple forums. I've shared it with my family. I've shared it with friends. I've shared it with everybody I can think of. Okay, this is a plea for help. No, I'm writing about this. I'm asking you. I'm not going to call you up and say, excuse me, I need help. I'm not. You have to see that I am depressed, or in my talk or whatever. So I don't know. Now I've also written an article recently saying articulate the fact that you need help, which also is true, because somebody is not astrophysicist or something to just get in your mind and say, okay, this is how you're feeling. So articulate. So for a long time, I wore masks and masks and masks, like triple, masks over, and chehre pe chehra, so that people would not know you for such a long time. Even when I'd go home, I would wear the mask. And then the pandemic kind of changed it a little bit, because it was so tough that I said, okay, I'm not going to wear the mask anymore. I'm just going to show you what I'm really feeling. And I did that. And people around were so shocked. Oh my God, is this really how she's feeling? And then, help, okay, what can we do to help? Arey, but मैं 4 साल से लिख रही हूँ ना. Say, do this. Say, what can I do to help? Don't assume that your form of help is what the help that the other person needs, because you're not in that person's shoes. Yeah? You ask that person, please tell me what I can do to help. Send love, send support, send hugs, virtual hugs, real hugs, whatever. Physical, tangible ways to show somebody that you care. Because validation, reassurance, support, a depressed person needs all this. And reaffirmation again and again and again. I love you. I'm here for you. What can I do to help? These are the things that a depressed person needs. And most people, I'm sorry to say, don't get it.
Good.
Don't get it. And so that leads to so much rage that now I stop caring whether other people will get it or not. I will soothe myself. I will do the things that make me feel better. That's really where it was.
That's really illuminating, and I see this as a big takeaway for myself, and I hope others also see it. This cannot be put more clearly. So thank you, Mini. Thank you for saying that out clear and loud. That ask me how am I feeling and say that you are here for me and show love.
Thank you.
That's brilliant.
That's my life, actually. That's why I wanted to, get that message out. It's really what I feel. And conversations, starting the conversations, which is why things like Proud Depressives, and even there are other groups online groups also, where people have at least started talking. You have to have the conversations, because otherwise you're just talking to a limited group of people who are already, you're preaching to the choir. हम सब यहाँ जो बात कर रहे हैं, we already know, because we are touched by it in some way. But the vast public outside doesn't give a shit, because they don't know. So you have to start the conversations with them. So they don't come back and at the end of a conversation, "Acha, I'm feeling very bad. Koi baat nahi, take care. So those conversations have to start on a much larger level.
I think the problem is the awareness is not there. Like, for example, one fellow was telling me, he was suffering from severe anxiety for about 15 years. He says that the generalized anxiety for about 15 years. And he said, ma'am, recently, by chance, when I was cutting the vegetable, there was a cut in my, finger, and all my relatives, everybody started calling, what happened? I heard that your finger got big cut, and everybody started calling, inquiring, ma'am, don't even ask me. 15 years I am suffering from such an anxiety. I have been sharing this to my wife, my mother, my father, my friends. They're telling, it's okay, no problem, nothing will happen. You're thinking too much, that's all, don't think too much. So he was like, oh my God, nobody on this earth understood that I'm going through so much of anxiety. And wo gyan de raha tha. They were telling, you do this, you do that. And see why I could, relate when Mini madam was telling that, this is what people say. The simple reason is there is no awareness that, there is something which can happen to the mind and that can be shown like this. So they don't know, they have not gone through that. See, I know that it is very painful, because I have also, cut my finger someday, and little, small bleb because of the cooker or whatever heat, it is very, very, burning, pain and all. That's why you can relate to the other person who cuts the finger. So it's as simple as that. And they have not gone through the depression. They have not gone through anxiety. How much ever you explain, they are not able to understand. So that is one big problem, what is, happening. And they're not able to understand how much ever this person says that, I'm feeling low, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling suicidal, I'm feeling anxious. Why are you feeling anxious? Everything is there. How many dresses you have? How many slippers you have? So they think, that is happiness. And, they don't know that happiness will not come like this.
Excellent. Dr. Rajni, may I request you to use this forum to people who have, suffer from mental illness, to reach out for help, and for friends and family, how to have more empathetic awareness and sensitization towards the topic. So what is your message to, both?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my message would be any change in the behavior from cradle till you are alive, any change in the behavior, if you're feeling very sad, very low, very anxious, any negative thoughts or abnormal thoughts and behavior, like some people get here, hear some thoughts, they start talking, hear some voices, they feel that somebody is plotting against them, somebody is up to harm them, and they start talking to themselves, they start smiling to themselves sometimes. So any change in the biological functions, as I told initially, that decrease in sleep or increase in sleep, decrease in appetite or increase in appetite, and any kind of suicidal thoughts, decrease in sexual activity. So in anhedonia, we call it, you are not able to enjoy what you were enjoying. So, and then increase in tobacco, alcohol, and any substance use, or even starting, you feel like going that side. So you need to seek help, talk to people. The only mantra is share, seek help. Talk to people, network with people, and support each other, because you can only recognize, as madam rightly pointed out, I am not going to go tell I am going to commit suicide tomorrow, I am going to attempt suicide tomorrow, I am feeling sad, I am feeling anxious. They will not go and tell. We have to recognize that, my friend was so bubbly, so talkative, today she is dull. So otherwise, in spite of that, we will tell, this lady nowadays has become very dull, I don't want to talk to her. She is so irritable nowadays, I don't want to talk to that person. So let us leave her, let us leave him. So I think we should really recognize, and support our friends, our family, whoever it is, if there is any difference. So we can ask a question, ma'am or sir or whoever it may be, are you going through some stress? What's happening nowadays? I feel, you seem to be more active. You can't tell, you seem to be very agitated nowadays. So I think you're working too much nowadays. What happened? Are you taking some rest? Is there any me time? You have to really give a forum to share. So today morning, I had a boy who was suffering from many years, from 10th standard. He is 21 now. So I was asking them, for a long time, he was simply sitting. He is not talking. He's telling, ma'am, I'm feeling very anxious from 1 year. Ma'am, I'm feeling very anxious. Anything else is there any stress? I'm asking repeatedly. That fellow is telling, ma'am, I'm feeling anxious from 1 year. That's all he is telling. Then I said, see, some people, like maybe some, the way you don't like, somebody would have touched you sometime, or somebody would have scolded you, or some fighting in the family, some failed romance, or failure in the exam, or you want to do something but you would not have done. So that kind of a thing, it stresses people. See, is anything that you have gone through? To my surprise, everything he has gone through. Then he started sharing. 9th standard, when I was 9-year-old, one of my girl cousin, she had abused me. So he vividly remembers everything. So everything he shared within next 20 minutes, one by one. So you have to give that stage for somebody to share. Otherwise, they will not share. So it is not easy to share. I should really congratulate Mini ma'am, for coming out and sharing so, nicely, and it's like a topic taught on depression and mental illness by her. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. I mean,
Thank you.
I cannot say how happy I feel to have hosted this conversation, and continues to underline the fact the need to have conversations, the need to vent out, the need to share, the need to kind of keep that conversation going till it becomes mainstream.
And various forums, as she told, we all know already. So how do we pull in more and more people?
Yeah, we have a lot of comments also, and we'll open the forum for questions also. But before that, Archana, may I request you to share your few words on the journey so far? And
we're not seeing, madam.
Archana, come on camera, please. and unmute yourself. And after Archana speaks, we will open the forum for questions. So people can ask questions live to Mini and Dr. Rajni.
So at the outset, what I would like to say is that I'm overwhelmed. You know, when Parikshit and I started this journey a year back, we were actually not sure whether, what would be the outcome of this and whether people would take kindly to this, whether my own career would get affected. Because, to come out in very, very conservative kind of a setting that I am in as a bureaucrat, to say that I've suffered depression and not to, maybe possibly always be debarred from important and top positions. So it was not easy for me. But what happened was that one of my colleagues, he was he's in the IPS and also my brother's friend. So he knew me from before, and he had seen me suffer depression very intimately. So once he just told me that, my pet name is Babni. So he said, Babni Didi, if you come out and, if you share your story, it will be like a major help for many people who are suffering silently. And why so? Because he said, because you've always been very bubbly, you've been a high achiever all your life, right from school to college to service. People who don't know you well think that, you have a fairy tale kind of life. So those of you who don't know you. So I came out on Facebook and I said that I'm La Deepika Padukone of bureaucracy. I've suffered depression. I've suffered suicidal thoughts and stuff. But it was only after Sushant Singh's death that, I think one would like to, one feels sad that such a brilliant actor died. But Sushant Singh's death and COVID in some ways has really helped mental illness take a front stage. So it was after, because when we started this movement, then COVID was going on. And then people started acknowledging that no, mental illness is something which is a reality, and it can happen to people who are famous, who are otherwise high functioning individuals, who are normal, who look normal, who don't have those crazy, spikes in the hair, like these stereotypes which we saw in Hollywood and Bollywood movies, that they are normal people who sometimes go through phases, and sometimes it can be a lifelong phase, or sometimes it can just be because of grief. So thankfully, COVID helped the Proud Depressive movement, and Sushant Singh's death helped the Proud Depressive movement to sustain. Initially, I remember I was telling my cousin Priya, who became the second person to join the conversation. I was saying कि क्या होगा एक दो conversation के बाद तो कोई मिलेगा भी नहीं जो अपना story share करना चाहेगा. But I was amazed. I mean, after 2-3, we had people in waiting for the conversation to come out and speak. So that was so heartening, because one never expected this. Because initially Parikshit and I were like every day conversing कि क्या रखें इसका नाम. Then when I said कि Proud Depressive नाम रहना चाहिए, then also we got a lot of brickbat कि proud क्या, depression कोई proud होने की चीज है क्या. So we said नहीं, depression में if the stigma has to go, this name has to stick. That we are depressed, we are proud to be depressed. There's proud in the sense there's nothing to be ashamed of. Because this is something, because they said kuch aisa naam rakho which will, not be so distasteful. Ki pride as such is not a good word. So basically what we thought was that how do we everything, then Lisa joined, and Lisa's joining, Tulika, Sanjeevan Lal, Neeta, Tejrashi ma'am is always there. All these people joining gave the movement a lot of momentum, because I got busy with my Civil Service Association thing, Karuna, and then Lisa took it over from me, and she's the one who's the real anchor now, who coordinates all the meetings. So after Lisa joining, she started, in Assam, she's very popular, so she got a lot of people. And so somehow, we started to gain momentum. Then we thought of a Facebook page. We got 2,000 followers without any publicity, without, even going in for any kind of promotion. And from then on, then Sejal joined. So with Sejal joining, YouTube, high tech, Instagram. And so the journey has been wonderful. And I think all the people who have been with us have been really awesome in supporting. And I started getting calls. I sensed that we had arrived when I started getting calls from the IAS fraternity that, we suffer depression, Archana, we cannot come out, but can you suggest me a psychiatrist? Can you suggest me a psychotherapist? That was when I realized, and even people who had, one of my friends had said that this is a publicity stunt for you, because, depression has become very fashionable to talk about. So I said, okay. And then I got mad at him and yevo. But after a year, I realized why he had said that, because he rang up and he said that he was severely depressed. So, the best part was that people from all walks of life, like in conversations, people may not come. Some of them still feel that if they attend this conversation, then maybe that's a stigma. But they give me messages on Messenger. There's so many people we've reached out to. I think I can proudly say I may have prevented 25 suicides at the least.
Excellent.
Because there have been people who just said that I'm feeling suicidal, can you help me? So that is one of the biggest achievements. Abhibi, many people then offered me awards. Can you come? Then I said, we're not doing it for awards. We're just doing it so that, that stigma goes. And I think to a certain extent, it has helped in a very small way, but it has helped, because it has also helped me. Not only this, we are taking it forward with the government, with MOHFW, Ministry of Health, with all people like Dr. Rajni and all. We are piloting this initiative for the common man in 9 states. We are piloting a community mental health program in 9 states. 9 states have come forward to take it, where we will have a community mental health volunteer who will identify, and we have adopted the WHO and the CSIR methodology of look, listen, and link. That the community mental health volunteer will look, and then he will listen to the person and then link him to a referral. So that is one of our biggest initiatives that we have already been able to pilot in 9 states. We've also been able to converse with the Department of Social Justice and Welfare, and even with the Ministry of Health. And we've been able to, even to a limited extent, try to have a more sympathetic and empathetic policy for people who with mental illnesses. Already legislation, to the credit of Mr. Modi, when he came, there were reservations about mental illness being considered as an illness for government jobs. In fact, I had opposed it in DOPT. But what he did was he set our objections aside, and now mental illness is a criteria for government job. So we have this very powerful Person with Disability Act 2016, in which mental illness has also become a category for reservation in jobs. So we have come a long way forward, and we first we thought that how should we, because not many people, there are many people in Proud Depressive, I'll not take names, who actually suffer depression, but they are still saying that no, put us in the supporters category because we don't want to come out. So that's why we had these three categories, so that people who actually suffer depression but are not willing to come out will join as supporters when some of them are actual depressives. So we did that. Then our conversations is something we love. We've had these, various conversations, right from gaslighting to family. And, Mini, on this, I would disagree with you a little, because I have on support, because I have been a person who suffered, plus I've been a caregiver to my mother, to my daughter, to my brother-in-law, to my father, who've all suffered depression. There is a caregiver fatigue too. I mean, I have seen that there's a limit to which, a person who has to live with a mentally ill person, there's a limit to which a person can take it. Because I have seen both sides of the coin. So on that, I feel that, even we should be a little, just because we are depressed, just because we suffer mental illness, should not give us a license to be, completely bossy and to always feel that it is always the other person who should understand. Because I remember that I was in denial when my mother said that you suffer mental illness, please go and take medicine. I just screamed at her. I said, because she was taking medicine, I said, how can you say that? I don't suffer mental illness, it's menopausal depression. So even I have been very, very unsympathetic to my mother. When she was saying, we always said ki maa to aa gayi, bas ab bakar bolegi mere saath ye hua, wo hua, ye hua. So we used to be relieved ki chalo abhi maa na dusre ghar mein gayi hai, abhi kuch din ke liye mental shanti. So we also have to, because see, we are not those chronic schizophrenics. So somewhere we also have to understand that, there is a limit to which the other person can understand. Of course, there are people who are mean and rude, like there were many in the family who were very happy to know that, despite all the aura around Archana Verma, she actually contemplated suicide. So those are meanies. But there are some people who actually don't understand, like my husband. He still doesn't understand that, mental illness is an illness which can happen to his wife. Though he's all for medicine and all, but he's not the type, like when I heard Shubhrata's story that her husband stood like a rock, went abroad and all. My husband was not like that. His reaction was, utho, chalo ka, ye karo, office jao, soe mat raho, and har samay ke mat karo. So that was his way of dealing with it. So there I feel that, we also owe it to the caregivers. It's not a very easy life for them. But I would in the end like to thank all of you who have, solidly supported the movement and given us such a safe space for us to, talk about dark things. And there are many things, like my anger has nothing to do with my mental illness. So, wo jo, that also came in the conversation, ki kabhi, you have diabetes, but you think you have mental illness. Or I have issues of anger management and I think it's because of mental illness. So this gradually, I think we are moving towards this favorite quote of mine that, mental illness is not a character flaw, it's a chemical flaw. So we've come a long way, and thank you, everybody. I mean, you all have been real rock stars. I think we will just grow in strength. Thank you, Tuli.
Thank you, Archana. That's spoken straight from the heart, like you always do. Very, very beautiful and absolutely It is she who's leading it, but everybody is contributing. Otherwise, this would not have been successful. So this is truly, a need that was felt, that is being, now being articulated, and more to come. More power to this movement. We will continue to speak and talk about it. So I see a lot of appreciation and commendations in the comment section. And people who are here, please unmute and ask the question. There is one that I will put to you, Dr. Rajni. Neeta is here also. She can ask directly. Neeta, your question about skin diseases which cannot be treated manually in depression. So do you want to?
Yeah, hi, thanks. That was fantastic, all of you, and thanks, Tolika. Also, I just wanted to, I think I missed that point when Dr. Rajni was saying that probably one of the early manifestations of depression are skin diseases. Is it under the eyes and all? Because my husband went through all kinds of treatments. I mean, I live in Ireland, so we've gone through all kinds of treatments here also and in India. But those things kept coming back. They just never went. And now I think he's very depressed. And he's on his own right now. And is that true? Is the skin disease, was it telling us something that we didn't notice?
Yeah, what I was telling was sometimes, the depression can present in different forms. One of the examples what I gave is the allergies, like psychogenic, pruritus we call, severe allergies, even psoriasis you must have heard. It is a skin disease, but when a person is stressed out, it increases, it triggers, episode comes. So psoriasis usually is more in winters and other seasons. You must have heard of it, which is very difficult, like scaly skin lesions and all. So, but stress will add on to it, a person who is not under much stress, everything is, he's able to handle. Of course, stress is part of our life, whether it is me, you, anybody under the sun, and stress is required for us to move on in a positive direction. But when it becomes too much to handle, we should find out the resources to handle that or seek help. So, yes, it could be one of the manifestations of stress. That is what I was telling. If nothing has helped, and because of that he is going through, the sad mood or depression, he can talk to a psychiatrist. Or if he is okay, I can talk to him, sometimes that is also
thanks for the offer.
But in-person consultation will have its own advantages. And if you can get to talk to a psychiatrist there, he can go and just check out. I wouldn't say he is depressed. That's why these lesions have come, or that dark circles have come. So we need to talk to him and figure out that it could be because of stress.
Oh, he's right now on his own trip. So I haven't seen him in months.
So I think a psychiatrist will be helpful. If it is not possible for you to go consult a psychiatrist in person, I can offer some help.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? If you have questions, otherwise, we are 10 minutes over time, but I'm sure we can stay back a few more minutes.
Can I add to the skin thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure.
Please.
Because I suffer from something which is lichen planus.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it is because of depression, but there is one symptom, very important body symptom of depression, that is acidity, and acid reflux.
Correct.
Whenever my gut, you will also feel that if you have a gut problem, as it is, all your chemicals like serotonin and all is made in the gut. So a person who is depressed will usually complain of acidity, a gut, and severe gut problems. And it is because of the gut that the skin inflammation, because the body is constantly inflamed and painful. So those are the physical manifestations of depression. It doesn't mean that if you have a severe acidity problem, you are depressed, but skin skin may it manifests itself, but you check his gut, he would definitely be suffering from some kind of gut issue. That is one thing I've seen. So these days I just don't allow my gut to go haywire. The moment I feel कि मेरा पेट खराब हो रहा है और acidity हो रहा है, I cut down on my food, start exercising. Because when I had depression, when I had suicidal feelings, I was also suffering from GERD. It is called gastrointestinal acid reflux. So, and because of that, I think my serotonin may have depleted, leading to, suicidal thoughts. So, all of us need to be careful about gut.
Yeah, whenever we are stressed out, the gastric acid secretion also increases in the stomach. So that will cause, as madam told, that GERD, gastroesophageal reflux, and then the gastritis, nausea, vomiting sensation, not able to eat. So yeah, that is one of the symptoms. And anxiety, basically. It's a lot of anxiety.
May I give an Ayurvedic reason for why this happens, if you have time?
I don't know. I mean, the host has to tell.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Hi, Praveen.
Sorry, we had some work Zoom call, so we just quickly finished it and joined a little later. Sorry about that.
What happens that Rishi Charak gave the idea that why a disease happens in the body. There are 3 elements of Ayurveda: Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and they're the 3 elements of our emotional existence: emotional, intellectual, and spiritual existence. The spiritual dimension happens at the level of when the sattva is there, sattvic guna. Sattvic guna is basically where the mind is in the state of equilibrium and restfulness. You are active in the world, but the mind is totally restful. There is no anger, and there is no, you do the right thing, but the mind is always peaceful and restful. In the case of Rajas, the mind is also active, the body is also active. The body is doing something and the mind is active in some other dimension, and you're always, there's a continuous chatter in the mind, or the mind is in multifarious directions. And the third is the tamasic, where the mind is also dull and the body is also dull. In the sattva, the mind is restful and peaceful, and the body is active. You do what you have to do. So Ayurveda says that all the genesis, now the modern science is coming to this, is that the genesis of the disease happens in the mind. Because you're producing the insensate thoughts. Actually, if I had to start an education system, I would teach people how to train the mind from the childhood. What your mind is all about. The Shastras gave the definition of mind because all diseases manifest in the mind, even depression manifests in the mind, because our inability to understand ourselves and our world. The stress is caused because our inability to deal with the world, and how the world is reacting to us and how we are reacting to the world. If I have to train the world, teach students, I will actually train what used to happen in the Gurukul in the earlier days, that they first gave you the exercises. They gave you the entire thought process and architecture to train your mind into it. And once your mind is trained, everything is trained in this world. Because the anger and depression are the 2 sides of the same coin. Places where you can give expression, vent to your anger, it means that sometimes, I'll just give a physical phenomena, when sometimes you're in a great rush, you have to reach, you're getting late, and when the red light comes, you're fuming in the car. This happens to all of us. So same thing happens to the mind. When mind is not able to give vent to the anger or expression, it leaves, you are trying to suppress yourself in that case. And when you give uncontrolled vent to your anger, it means that your mind is not trained, because you're negatively reacting to all situations. So you have to understand that you have a mind, which I had discussed earlier also. Actually, in the Indian concept is Man, Buddhi, Chit. The Man is always restless, but the Buddhi is the intellect with which he can train it and bring into a state of Chit where there is a Shanti and restfulness. So if we can train slowly, gradually understand our own mind, because the Shastra says the mind exists at two levels. It says, see, metaphorically, it says that mind is like a monkey who's drunk and bitten by the scorpion. The monkey as such doesn't sit still. If it is drunk and bitten by a scorpion, this is the nature of mind. Every time it is jumping, like I'm talking, your mind can go actually into the kitchen, into some other thing, this happens to us. The other is the mind is insatiable. The fire cannot be satiated with all the wood of the universe. So that these are the two natures of the mind. If we can understand our mind and, with the help of a teacher who can help us to become more mindful, more thoughtful, because you produce incessant thoughts, you create an aura of energy around yourself, and all the organs of the body, like Archana ji was saying, that gut is a problem, skin is a problem. These are actually manifestations of the thoughts which we are not able to manage. They manifest as a disease. This is the reason for the disease in my body. Like Dr. Rajini was saying, actually it is stress eczema, stress psoriasis. When a patient comes to me, my teacher trained me, because when I scan a person, I am an Ayurvedic physician also by hobby. I can actually tell from the person's energy aura that what is his problem is. Because his mind is creating that problem with him.
Sir, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and I'm sure there are others who want to listen to you in more detail. So let's kind of schedule it for later. Minnie has an appointment at 2, so she would like to leave. She was kind of asking me if we can, let her go. So any final words that people have to say to Minnie? Otherwise, we will at least let Minnie go, and then Dr. Rajni, if you can stay back for a few questions.
I have to go with a broker to see a house, so they won't wait for anybody.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
You were awesome. Thank you.
You were awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye bye.
डॉक्टर साहब, आपके बारे में मुझे एक ये चीज कहना है कि there is a demand that you should take our next session. And while I completely agree with you on many things, I slightly disagree that you just stigmatized my mind.
It's a big debate that can happen.
Would you be willing to be our next speaker? Because what you said, I have dabbled in Buddhism. I have dabbled in all kinds of, alternative therapy. But till I took the medicine, my mind could not be controlled. So maybe, what you say is true. But yes, it is a kind of mind stigma कि आपका mind ऐसे है इसीलिए आप ऐसे हो. There are if you believe in birth and rebirth, then you can take it to karma and your actions of the past. So one doesn't know, but would you be willing, because what you said is mind blowing.
What I can do is,
next speaker.
Actually, you're talking to me.
Archana, if we can take that offline and kind of wrap up this session. So if there are other questions that we have for Dr. Rajni, otherwise we can wrap up. But yes, sir, that was a question for you. A request to be the next speaker.
I will. I will, and I agree with you. There is a problem.
I have a client waiting. If nobody has a question, I can log out.
Okay, so Dr. Rajni has to go too. Does anybody have a question?
I think Dr. Abhishek Shankar had a question.
Yeah, exactly. So Dr. Abhishek, do you want to ask your question live right now, if you're still here?
Abhishek?
I think he's gone.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I think he's logged off. He's no longer around.
Okay. So we can take offline also, ma'am.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Rajni, for being such an illuminative speaker, and your experiences were really mind-blowing and very, very educative. So thank you so much for such
Thanks for the opportunity, ma'am.
It was wonderful talking to you and to Minnie today.
Same here.
Excellent.
Thanks a lot. Thank you all.
Thank you. So with that, I think we can end the discussion today. And any
Tulika, just a moment. Let me get a yay from
Okay.
Sanjeev, would you be willing to be our next speaker?
Yes, I will. I can be your next speaker. If you want me to speak generally, I can generally speak about mind and Ayurveda.
Yeah.
And it can. I agree with you that my teacher said that whenever there's a disease has manifested, healing happens at various levels. But he said medicine is an integral part of the healing process. He said that's why God created the medicines. You may take a allopathic medicine, Ayurveda or homeopathy, whatever resonates best with you, but medicine is required. I totally agree with you.
Okay, good. It will be good to have an alternative point of view as well. So let's bring in all kinds of perspectives. Perfect. So with that, let us conclude this 1-year anniversary conversation. And I personally had a lot of fun. I don't know about the rest of you.
I had a small bout of depression. The last session I spoke about my depression, but that bout was a very, very intense bout of depression. It lasted for about 3 months, but those 3 months were perhaps one of the most difficult times of my life. So Sangeeti told me, he did not give me any medicine. We used other kind of, like I always speak about chanting and other stuff on the road. So medicine, yes, is integral, but sometimes masters can also cure without medicine. That is the only point I wanted to make, and it's been great to be a part of it.
Archana, you spoke very well about the entire, you gave a very good 360-degree view of, I really loved it. Having empathy for the people, for your caretaker also. That's very nice.
And Tuli, you were awesome. 3 cheers for Tulika.
She's off.
Tulika ji on mute.
Tuli, you are on mute.
Okay, sorry. I said we'll meet again next month with another engaging conversation, the genesis of which has already started here. So with that, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for all the love, and have a great rest of the Sunday. Thank you. It was a wonderful 1-year anniversary session, and we are on to the next year now. This is year 2 for Proud Depressives.
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay.
3 cheers for all of us.
So thank you. All the best. God bless
Thank
you all.
you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.